Welcome to Baked HR with Jasmine,
And Christina,
where we put the HR in humor.
here there are no cover letters, no handbooks, just our take on
HR.
and recruiting. Well, I almost accidentally hit leave meeting.
Jesus.
That would set us back like another 7 minutes.
That's awesome.
Okay. Da, da, da. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Baked HR. Tonight we are talking about the responsibility companies have for third-party vendors. Christina, go ahead and kick us off and tell us why we're talking about this topic tonight.
Okay, so this, like most things, it started in the group chat because I was having a conversation with a client of mine, and they were showing me some new HR tech that they were very excited about. And one of the features that they shared with me is that they can search by white people for candidates. And I was like, but we're not going to do that. So why did you point that out to me? And then, of course, it got me asking lawyer friend a lot of questions because I do remember some basics around this topic and the responsibility that you have when you use things that break the law or people that break the law. So I wanted us to bring attorney friend on to kind of send us in the right direction.
All right, attorney friend, that means we have a few questions for you tonight. First one being, am I or the company responsible if a vendor I hire breaks a law that I know I'm supposed to follow?
The vendor is never going to be liable for this.
Even though they're the one setting me up to break the law?
Absolutely. So with the exception of very, very few states, my state, Minnesota being one of them, that has an aiding and abetting statute, which means that if somebody who helps discrimination happen can be liable. But even in those situations, when you signed that master service agreement or whatever contract you signed with the vendor, it is highly likely that you promised to indemnify them for any liability that they helped you create. So if they helped you discriminate, you're still going to be on the hook. So because you, the employer, are still making the hiring decision. So they could help you discriminate all you want, but if you made the hiring decision from that sorting for white people, you're going to be liable for discrimination. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, let's give this like a little bit more context because I know that as the employer, our responsibility expands past just like our ATS vendors or any other tech we buy. So, I mean, same thing for like a staffing service or the company we use to print the swag that we give out to employees.
Yes, all of the above.
What can we do as employers then to make sure we're working with quality vendors who are not directly or indirectly aiding and abetting us to this kind of scenario?
So there's a couple of things I'm going to want my clients to do when they do this. One is to say in the contract that we, the vendor, promise not to break the law. So that if they help you break the law, or if they engage in some kind of behavior that makes it so that you could break the law, they violated the agreement. Okay. So that's a first, so that would be a material breach of the agreement. The next part is don't ever sign something that says that you indemnify them for anything. You want to avoid those. A lot of vendors are going to say, well, we won't engage with you if you have an indemnification clause, or you don't indemnify us. And that's fine. That's a sign of people that you don't want to work with. But you want to make sure that you're not promising to help them. The next thing that you want is that they will give you all of the information needed to help defend your decision. So a lot of these systems where it is, they may be using artificial intelligence, or they may be using machine learning or something to find out who the best candidates are based upon historical data. You want to be able to give that entire algorithm to the EEOC or to the Department of Labor when there is a concern about how the algorithm was used. You always can protect it proprietary, so you're not like just sharing trade secrets away, but you want them to be able to give you information to help you make that decision. And if they refuse because it's their trade secret, it's their, information, okay, but what are you going to give me? And how are you going to save that data? So, for example, in artificial intelligence, machine learning, that stuff, that algorithm changes constantly. So, do they even have the algorithm I used 180 days ago to make that decision? So, you want to ask about their archiving as well. Fun stuff, right?
Good stuff. Like I'm literally writing this down. Like I'm not going to be able to watch this episode again. Like this is really good stuff.
Okay.
I'm wondering why you were over there writing. I was like, we're recording. What are you
writing? No, I'm literally taking notes. Okay, so I am going to tell you, like I know that you have to be like you're on the hook if you bring a bad actor onto, like, we work in an industry that does a lot of like subcontracting and such. So like I've always been aware of that, but realizing that the vendor, specifically in this case, is not able, like not on the hook, is like brand new information to me. And I'm like, this explains the state of HR tech to me. Like,
oh yeah, they haven't been afraid. They haven't been made to be afraid. In fact, the one example that I can think of where the AI, the technology itself, was found to be discriminatory, they turned the function off and then waited a year before they made any changes. Or told anybody that they turned the functionality off, because a year would be the statute of limitations in a state like mine. So they wanted to wait for the statute of limitations to lapse before they told anybody that they made these changes.
So
fascinating.
Oh, right?
Wow. No, I'm so glad that we asked you these questions.
Okay.
Jasmine, I have another question for her that's not related to this. So do you have any questions to tack onto this before I switch topics for us?
So no, you know what? I'm gonna let you go ahead and go with your question, because I think the last overall question kind of wraps up everything, and of course gives out resources to people, hopefully. So
that's my question. So you can go ahead and ask it. Yeah,
go right. Perfect then. So Kate, I have some resources that I constantly stick with in order to find out what's going on, of course, in the HR and legal space. But what are some resources that employers or HR professionals in general should use, that you think should use to stay up to date on, any potential employment legislation changes?
Okay, so there's two. And I know for the people who have also signed up for these are a lot of emails. And I get that it's a lot of emails, okay? But my favorite one is HR Dive, because they both highlight cases and changes. And they have a couple ticklers of changes of laws that are really helpful to me, particularly salary history ban questions. They have a tickler for that. I think they might even have one for paid leave across all states and jurisdictions. So though I go to those ticklers quite a bit to find out, well, what new state has said this, that kind of thing. So it is a lot of emails. HR Dive is like 3 emails a day, I want to say. So it's a lot, but I really like that one. I mean, I just scan the emails every day, I think. The other one is BakedHR, which is tied to this big legal research service called LexisNexis. But Expert HR is another fairly good one. They have a lot of kind of like summary guides, like they'll come out with, termination pay summary guide kind of things and stuff like that. So I use that a lot. You can pay for that service. HR Dive is free, but you can pay for Expert HR. That's a subscription service if you have the funds and resources. I think both of those organizations are truly agnostic to what the outcome of those laws are. It's just an information sharing piece. Whereas some other organizations that I have very, very strong feelings about has a perspective. And I think that can cloud the commentary that they give. So
Yeah, I have HR Dive, and I have a specific folder for HR Dive because just hop on over there. I'll get over there in a few, but just go ahead and go into that little itsy folder. So I'm not constantly looking at your emails, but it's really good information, which is why I keep it, but I know it has to go into a different folder.
Yeah, it can get overwhelming. Yep, I get it. But no, it is really good information. The case updates themselves are really fantastic. So yeah.
I mean, using the rule function in email is the only thing that keeps me halfway sane. So I do the same thing, Jasmine. I'm totally with it. And we ask this question because we're under the impression that like we can't just be like, oh, we didn't know that law existed, and that's why we follow it.
No, yeah, you can't play ignorance of the law. You are required to know what it is. And so it's not like, oh, I didn't know I had to pay minimum wage. No, that's not how that works. Sorry, people.
So after my experience with the organization that we all have feelings about, and being part of that email, you know, because that's a separate email you have to unsubscribe from. I think what I learned at a very young age as a fairly fresh HR professional was that all of us really have access to this information, and we can go read it ourselves. Sometimes it's nice when someone else summarizes it for us, but I learned really quickly that when we were getting the summary from that source, it was slanted one way or the other.
Right.
Probably 8 or 9 times out of 10. And we can't say that all of our organizations are different and our people needs are different and stuff if we're all just going and touting the same thing to our representatives because another organization told us to. So I always try to encourage HR professionals to, and I tell them to just, you know, go to the government sites, but I realize that might be a little overwhelming for people. So hopefully these two that you gave us, HR Dive and Expert HR, will be really good resources.
Well, and you just have to sign up for the email for Expert HR and you'll get a bunch of stuff. You don't have to actually pay for the subscription. They might give you calls and stuff, but you know, those are solicitation calls that we all deal with. I want to give you one example of that organization tilting something that I think was in the wrong way, if that's okay with you.
Let's do it.
There is new paid leave laws that work like unemployment, where there's a tax either on both the employer and the employee. In Connecticut, I believe it's just on the employee side, but it pays like unemployment for someone who's out on family leave. So it's kind of awesome because the employer is not involved in the decision about how much pay or when the pay is. It's all handled like unemployment is handled. There's an agency within the state that handles all of that. So if you go out on your 12 weeks of FMLA, you fill out some paperwork and you get the pay directly from the state, like unemployment, for your family leave. Now that's awesome from an employer perspective because we don't have to do shit.
Yeah.
Right? We have to,
because we already have a lot of things to do as HR professionals.
Right. We're going to be we're going to be managing the protection of the time off, but we don't have to pay it. And so if we don't have to pay it and we don't have to manage the pay, we don't have to do any of that stuff, it takes a burden off of us. Yes, if we have to pay part of the tax, yes, that can be costly. But if the employee is paying it on the one side and we are just the filter, just like we are for FICA and FUTA or whatever other taxes you have to pay, then that makes it pretty easy for us and cheaper than paying for family for everybody. So this is one where it came out from the organization that was slanted against it. And I'm like, no, this is a much better deal than us having to do the 12 weeks paid all on our own. So like, that's an example of you have to be mindful of the position of the organization that's giving you the information. Expert and HR Dive have no bone in that fight. They're just a news source in lots of ways. So that's why I like them.
Okay, really cool. Well, that was super helpful information. Thank you for being willing to jump on another episode with us. We appreciate you.
Anytime, ladies, anytime.
All right, Kate. Well, that is all for us tonight. We will see y'all next time.
Bye.